Welcome to the CDA Institute's Geopolitical Update. I'm Josh Malm, Director of Research and Analysis for the Institute, and I'm joined by geopolitical expert Joseph Varner, Deputy Director of the Conference of Defense Associations and former Director of Policy for the Minister of National Defense. In this podcast, Joe will provide his analysis and insights on the most significant geopolitical and international security developments of the week. So grab your headphones and get ready for a concise but comprehensive update on the world's most pressing geopolitical issues. The CDA Institute encourages rigorous debate on national security matters through our events, research, and publications.
Joe, thanks for joining us for another geopolitical update. I note that it is August 29th. We're almost in September, almost in the fall. What's been happening this week? What's on the menu geopolitically?
Well, three stories this week that are of particular interest are Hezbollah's attack on Israel and Iran's threatened retaliation, Russia's Ukraine war, and China's escalation in the South China Sea to test its neighbors and the resolve of the United States. In Europe, the Ukrainians have continued their offensive in the Kursk Oblast of Russia and have started to dig in and dig defensive lines and obstacles. The going has become slow, and Russia continues to bring together forces to pressure Ukraine's Kursk salient. To the south in the Donbass, Russia is continuing its offensive to seize the strategic town of Pokrovsk, which is a road and rail hub and a city with a pre-war population of about 60,000 people. Most of those people are now being evacuated. Russia is continuing its offensive to break into Ukraine's defensive line of fortified cities to threaten Kharkiv and ultimately Kiev. And Ukraine's surprise Kursk offensive can only be putting pressure on Ukraine's front lines elsewhere in the south that are lacking in both rest and reinforcements. Ukrainian forces everywhere on the line are under pressure, but the Ukraine surprise offensive in Kursk seems to have increased that pressure. Though highly unlikely, Russia's military doctrine calls for force up to nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction to be used to stop an invasion of its territory, as Ukraine has now done in the Kursk Oblast. Two new dynamics is that Russia's ally Belarus has pushed its army up to the border with Ukraine, and Ukraine has threatened to target Minsk's forces. And Ukraine has said that it now has developed a ballistic missile that can threaten wide swaths of Russian territory far from the war's front lines. In the Middle East, we finally saw Hezbollah's attempt at retaliation on Israel this past weekend for Israel's targeted killing of Hezbollah's military commander. On Sunday morning, though, before Hezbollah could launch, Israel launched a preemptive attack of its own on Hezbollah aimed at missile launchers in Lebanon that had been programmed to be fired at 5 a.m. in the direction of Tel Aviv. Hezbollah planned to fire a limited number of precision missiles at the headquarters of Mossad and a unit named Unit 8200. All the Hezbollah launchers that were targeted were destroyed. Israel Army Radio reported that about 100 Israeli fighter jets preemptively struck more than 200 Hezbollah launch sites in southern Lebanon. And according to the IDF, some 210 rockets and some 20 drones were launched from Lebanon at northern Israel following the Israeli preemptive attack. Israel's Channel 12 reported that Hezbollah had planned to launch as many as 6,000 rockets and drones at Israel. And of course, the Israelis interrupted that. Israeli security officials said that Israel destroyed 2/3 of the munitions Hezbollah had planned to launch against Israel. And the IDF assessed that Hezbollah launched less than 50% of its munitions intended for the August 24th, 25th attack. Hezbollah later announced that the rest of the so-called axis of resistance, Iran's proxy militias, and Iran would follow up for the targeted killing of Hamas political leader at a later time expected in the coming days. And the U.S., during this time, provided the Israelis with intelligence that supported Israel in its preemptive strike against Hezbollah and has warned Iran repeatedly not to follow suit. In the Indo-Pacific, China has continued to escalate in the South China Sea with the U.S. ally, the Philippines, in another ramming incident by the Chinese Coast Guard against a Philippine fisheries patrol vessel. And hostile acts targeting Philippines flights over the area have also started again. The Philippines has really been under pressure from China and Chinese bullying, and the Chinese have been using gray zone tactics to try and find the limits of the U.S. resolve in defending the Philippines, as well as the Philippines' resolve in actually continuing to patrol the West Philippine Sea. The Chinese forces involved in intimidating the Philippines fishery patrol vessel that was rammed at Escobeta Shoal, a feature that resides within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, included as many as 40 vessels, including PLA warships, China Coast Guard, and Chinese maritime militia. The U.S. military has said that it is open to possibly escorting Philippine ships in the disputed South China Sea, depending on consultations under the Allies' 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty, and similarly has said today that many options are on the table in the face of increasing Chinese hostilities. Similarly, we've witnessed the first Chinese violation of Japanese airspace using a reconnaissance aircraft. This follows Chinese regular incursions and intimidation of Japanese fishing vessels around the Senkakus. And again, to test the limits of Japanese resolve and the U.S. willingness to defend Japanese interests. And it's important to note that Chinese survey ships are routinely operating and intruding, violating the exclusive economic zones of the Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia. And Chinese activities are even now encroaching on the northern extremities of the Indonesian exclusive economic zone as well. Three other stories to watch are Russia's continuing hybrid warfare campaign against NATO, China's new conventional powered attack submarine, and Iran's new drone carrier, and surprise at sea and perhaps in port. In the last week, Norway has revealed that one of its most strategic air bases has been the target of sabotage. And this announcement comes as other European NATO air bases, namely in Germany, have reported incidents, one of which remains unexplained, as well as troubling drone activity over critical infrastructure. These incidents come amid increasing warnings about Russian hybrid warfare offensive in continental Europe against the European Union and NATO. The Chinese People's Liberation Army, Navy, recently revealed a new type of submarine in celebration of the 70th anniversary of founding of its submarine force. The new conventional powered attack submarine could be a new variant of the type 039, known as the Yan class. There are 48 diesel-powered attack submarines in the Chinese Navy's service, and almost half of them belong to the type 039 class. The new submarine is significantly longer than its predecessors and likely has a vertical launch system, which would be completely new for China's conventional submarine fleet. The new submarine is significantly longer than its predecessors and likely has a vertical launch system for firing missiles, a new addition to be found on Chinese conventional submarines. As well, the submarine may have an X-shaped stern that is also previously different and not seen in any other Chinese submarine design to date. And lastly, Iran is readying to launch what is believed to be its first drone carrier, the Shahid Bagheri, a converted box ship previously called Sarvan. The reconfigured vessel has a widened deck and has around 170 meters of runway, which is available to accommodate the departure and landing of a large fleet of fixed-wing long-range drones and maybe rotary wing drones that can be used by Iran to project power far from its shores by attacking commercial shipping when given the order to do so and when least expected. This is just one of the latest adaptations of commercial ships by Iran for military purposes. And again, they're for long-range power projection. In January, Iran successfully tested the launch of a ballistic missile housed in a container on a container ship, giving it the ability to launch surprise missile strikes from cargo ships on warships, presumably at sea, and in particular, maybe in port. From what is, container ships, a highly survivable platform. Note that China has developed what is believed to be its first dedicated drone carrier, and other Pacific nations are actually said to be looking at the concept as well.
Joe, thank you once again for your insightful analysis and for guiding us through this week's geopolitical developments. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in once again. Be sure to check us out next week as we reconvene with Joe to delve into another week of global affairs. Thank you, everyone.